Tonight, the episode you've been waiting for, we're going to wrap up the year 1980 by deciding which is the best heavy metal song and album of the year. And along the way, we're going to settle a growing controversy out on the internet concerning Judas Priest's album, British Steel. On one hand, many people consider it an all-time classic, one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. On the other, there's a growing wave of criticism on the internet that says British Steel is overhyped and overrated. Well, the verdict is in. What is the verdict? Find out next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to another episode of The Metal Dude Abides. Tonight, the episode you've been waiting for, the best heavy metal album and the best heavy metal song of 1980. But before we get to that, I noticed a little bit of a controversy out on the internet where I love a good list. And there's a lot of people who have been doing lists about the greatest discographies of this band or that band. So I happen to be looking at a couple of discographies on Judas Priest. And it seems like there's a growing voice out there that says British Steel is overrated, overhyped, and not one of the upper echelon albums in the Judas Priest collection. Now, I obviously disagree with that account, but let's go through the album track by track and see if I can convince you give British Steel another shot. All right, before we get into it, I'm going to do something very different for the Metal Channel. I'm actually going to use a prop. Now, normally I don't use props, although I own 90% of the albums we talk about. Let's face it, I'm too lazy to go dig them out for each episode. I have literally tubs and boxes of albums. I have boxes of CDs, and these days the Metal Dude just pretty much keeps them all in storage and listens to everything on Spotify. But if you watched year one of my episodes, you'll know that this bad boy was hanging prominently right behind me. And I'm too lazy to go dig up albums. Well, I've also been too lazy to put this one back. So it's still hanging out, so I thought I'd use it today. And since I have it out, here it is, the original. And I love on the back cover, check this out, Rob Halford with hair. Look at that. Unbelievable. All right. The other thing I want to say is that as I do a lot of research on Wikipedia, I know, it's sketchy. Their track listing on the CD is different than what's on my album. And I listened to this album a million times. So right off the bat, I'm like, that I might be old, but I still remember a few things. And sure enough, when I pulled out the album, the track listing is completely different. And once again, I'm too lazy to go out and dig through my crate and see what the track listing on the CD is. So we're going to go with the album ranking and just assume Wikipedia is crazy. But if you have a CD and these songs are in a different order, that's why. This is the original album. This is the way I originally heard the album. So let's go with the first track on the album, Breaking the Law. That's right. We're going to get controversial right off the bat because there's a lot of people who say Breaking the Law is way too commercial. It's being played to death on, classic rock playlists around the world. But let me just say, yes, there's a commercial element to Breaking the Law, but this is a surprisingly heavy pop hit. And what I mean by that is you have that great opening riff. This thing cooks. There's a lot of people that will go and sell out and put together this, pop song. It's not nearly as heavy as this. This is really actually quite good. I was laughing. You've got this great intro, great speedy intro. You've got Glenn Tipton's just cranking on the guitar. They're doing guitar solos. Sirens are going off. Yes, it's on FM radio. Yes, it's probably a little bit overplayed, but this song is absolutely the fantastic album opener. Our first track, and an enthusiastic thumbs up, Breaking the Law. Our first track is really fast, but our second track is both fast and heavy. Rapid Fire, one of the heaviest songs in the early Judas Priest catalog. I love this song. I think it is. I don't know why this isn't being pushed more as a hit off this album. The one thing that I have had some quarrels with, or some debate with Judas Priest on, is I sometimes don't think Judas Priest has a good feel for their audience. I think pushing this song would have even made this album bigger. It's got everything you want. Again, it's fast, it's heavy. The lyrics of this song are just sensational. And of course, Rob Halford's just Rob Halford. Rob sounds so good on this album. If you haven't heard Rapid Fire, check this out. It's an underrated classic. As Rapid Fire comes to an end, it starts playing this like metallic, like sheet metal pounding back and forth. And then it breaks into one of their iconic songs, Metal Gods. This is one of their trademark songs, to the point that Rob Halford himself uses the moniker from this song, as he refers to himself often as the Metal God. This is one of the songs that if you go see Judas Priest live, very good chance you're going to see this song, hear this song, one of their staples. One of the things that really stands out about this album is how many songs off this album Judas Priest still plays in their live sets today. We've already talked about Breaking the Law, which is on their encore. The last 2 times I saw them, Metal Gods is another one you're going to see a whole lot of. Our third track, Metal Gods. Sometimes it's very challenging to have a music channel where you can't play music. You have to describe music and you have to talk about music, but because of YouTube copyright laws, you can't actually play the music and have people listen to what you're trying to say. This is one of those songs where I really wish I could play the song for you, because Grinder has one of the heaviest riffs in Judas Priest history. Almost Sabbath-like riff. And then it breaks into more of your standard kind of a Judas Priest song. It has a soaring Glenn Tipton solo in here. And then it comes right back down into that grindy beat, that riff. The transition from the solo back into that riff is so well done. I love this song. Grinder, another song. When we talk about great albums, when we talk about classic albums, there's going to have to be those songs that aren't big hits, but really put this whole thing together. Grinders like the mortar between the bricks. Really good stuff. All right. Ending side 1 is track 5. And another bit of a controversial one, I think. United. United is an anthem. It's a chorusy type of anthem. You see this a lot in the early Judas Priest, Take on All the World, Defenders of the Faith, United. It's kind of one of their things that they did back then. And while anthems maybe don't stand quite the test of time, and if you listen to it now, you'd be like, what's this all about? But let me just throw something out at you. One of the things that I really wish the heavy metal community would do in 2024 is to come together. We spend too much time squabbling of who's heavier than whom, what is real metal, what's not real metal, that's not, your hair's too long, oh, you wear too much makeup, all the arguments, right? But back then, 1980, heavy metal did not have any commercial appeal. Punk rock was all the rage, disco was all the rage, and so there were some bands, Saxon with Denim and Leather, Judas Priest right here with United, who kind of said, the metal community needs to come together. And they did. And they became a force to be reckoned with in music. The new wave of British heavy metal was really a movement of young people in England saying, enough of this crappy music. We're going to take over the clubs. We're going to take over, and we're going to become a family. This is about being family, everybody. We are a metal community, and if we pull together and support one another, go to your record store, buy these albums, go out and see live music, support your local metal, we could bring back another, wave of great metal music. This was the beginning of a very prosperous time for metal because the metal community pulled together. It's a lesson to always keep in mind when you see people out there squabbling on the internet. All right, we start off side 2 with track 6, Living After Midnight. Okay, I am not going to try to convince you for too long about this song. It is a little bit too commercial. It has definitely been overplayed over the years, but I do believe it is still a fantastic song. Rob Halford is Rob Halford. His singing is great, but you also have a nice little drum startup with Dave Holland. Dave Holland is not my favorite Priest drummer by any means, but he's actually pretty good on this album. Love the work he does in like Rapid Fire. Love the work he does on this song in particular. If you don't like this song, I'm not going to try to twist your arm. It is a little bit on the light side, but I still think it is great. And let me just say, I got lucky. I was able to see Judas Priest twice on their celebrating 50 years of metal tour. And in both concerts, Living After Midnight was part of the encore. And the crowd went crazy. So even if you're a little tired of this song, and even if it's been overplayed, and even if it is a little commercial, if you go out and see these guys live, you might rediscover a love of this song. Track 6, Living After Midnight. More controversy abounds on track 7. You don't have to be old to be wise. I see a lot of people out there on the internet crapping on this song. I personally love this song. Let me tell you, I feel, let's put it to you this way. Right now, kids, young people, don't get much of a say in the culture. They don't get much of a say because there's so many baby boomers running around, right? They kind of dominate the culture. This is probably an old guy talking, but every once in a while you're in the car and you turn on the radio. And iHeartRadio is this big conglomerate, so it's probably the same radio station you're going to hear in every major city of this country. And right now, they're probably playing Nirvana or The Offspring. Why are our rock stations playing music that's 30 plus years old? Why aren't we letting kids' culture? Now, granted, you're probably thinking to yourself, kids don't listen to the radio, that's why. Well, a fair point. But you know what? When I had the satellite radio in the truck, man, Ozzy's Boneyard was great. But I loved going over to see Octane just as much as I went over to see Liquid Metal. I still think there's reason to have new rock being played on radio and introducing new fans of the music to what's great in our music today. And that's kind of what this song was about. There was a lot of people, I'm sure, when Judas Priest came out and said, they're not Led Zeppelin, they're not Sabbath, they're not this and they're not that. Judas Priest says, no, we're better. We're here. We're the new generation. We're coming to kick your ass. And I love this song. My favorite line on it is, take a good, long, hard look into the mirror. Now tell me now, who's been had? I butchered it, but you get the drift. It's hilarious. Support new music. Don't, I'm sitting here talking about 1980, you're saying. Hypocrite. But we also talk about new music. I'll be putting out a best of 2024, at the end of the year, just like everybody else. So we try to balance new with old. And in this case, check it out. You don't have to be old to be wise. Let's talk about one of my favorite Judas Priest tracks. Track 8, The Rage. First of all, it's got a great sounding. I've always said good heavy metal has rage in it. Find me a heavy metal song that has rage in the title, I'll show you a real banger. But in all seriousness, this is, first and foremost, We talk about the great guitarist Glenn Tipton. We talk about the great guitarist K.K. Downing. We rarely talk about Ian Hill, a cornerstone of Judas Priest for almost the entirety of the 50 years they've been together. And he has one of the best bass lines you're ever going to hear in this song. And that bass starts us off on a journey where that builds and builds and builds. The intensity builds and builds and builds to this huge crescendo. Sung beautifully by Rob Halford. If you were with us a couple of weeks ago, you know how much I think of this song. One of the best vocal performances in Rob Halford's storied career. That is saying a ton. This is one of the greatest vocalists in heavy metal history. To be amongst the best songs in his career, oof, this song will give you goosebumps. So well sung. Ian Hill on bass, one of the absolute unsung gems. You want to go find a great heavy metal song that not a lot of people have probably heard? Go check out The Rage. The album finishes on a song, Stealer, that arguably is not one of the best songs on the album, but it does highlight something that I really like about Judas Priest. The twin guitars of Glenn Tipton and K.K. Downing. What a pair. The interlude between those two guitars, the way one riffs, the other does solos, they can switch, the versatility. Watching those two play their instruments throughout the structure of a song is something magical to behold. Glenn Tipton's dealing with some serious health issues right now. Get better, Glenn. We love you. K.K. Downing's off doing his own things. In fact, I'm going to see him in Denver in a couple of weeks. But those two together, make no mistake, when you see great lists of great guitarists, often you're not going to see either one of their names on that list, because as one single guitarist, they're not one of the greatest of all times. But put those two together, ooh, the way they play off each other is absolutely incredible. And they do so in this one. Dave Holland's also actually good on this. We talk a little bit. I kind of diss poor Dave Holland because, there's been better drummers. There currently is. Scott Travis is one of my favorite drummers. So I sometimes look at this era as not being, great on drums. But Dave kills it on this song too. So a great way to close the album. What a sensational album. Just to wrap it up. This is one of the best Judas Priest albums. Halford sings great on this album. Again, KK and Glenn are just playing their asses off, really playing off of each other, doing some of the amazing riffs and solos. Ian Hill, Dave Holland, bringing up the rear, bringing up the bottom, giving a good solid foundation to all of it. This is one of the greatest albums in the Judas Priest collection, and really, quite frankly, one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. But does it make the nominees for one of the best heavy metal albums of 1980? Let's find out. All right, let's get to it. Best heavy metal song and best heavy metal album of 1980. If you were with us last week, I'm going to do something similar to what we did with the best hard rock album and song by just listing the albums first and then talking about the songs that are nominated, because most of the songs we're going to nominate come off these albums. So killing two birds with one stone, if you will. But let's get to the nominees. Our first nominee for Album of the Year, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. This album is so chock full of great songs. From the opening riffs of Neon Night, to the crunchy heaviness of Children of the Sea, to fast songs like Die Young, and to instrumental wizardry in Lonely is the Word. This album has it all. One of the greatest Sabbath albums of all time. But for the heavy metal song of the year, I am going to nominate the title track, Heaven and Hell. And the reason is simple. I love like 5 songs off this album that any one of them I would have no problem nominating for Song of the Year. So tie goes to the fact that Ronnie James Dio says this is his best song. And most people who have looked at this era of Black Sabbath acknowledge or acclaim that this is their best song. So, nominee for Best Album of the Year, Heaven and Hell. Nominee for Best Song of the Year, Heaven and Hell. Now, our second album, Lightning to the Nations, is going to feature our second nominee for Song of the Year, Am I Evil? We have joked a little bit about this song in that poor Diamond Head never really got any sort of commercial success whatsoever, and that this song is mostly famous because Metallica covered it on their 1983 Kill 'Em All album. I would bet money that if you've heard this song, you've probably heard the Metallica version. But if you haven't heard the Diamond Head version, in all seriousness, go and check it out. It is one of the best heavy metal songs ever written. There's a reason Metallica covered this. There was a reason Dave Mustaine liked this. This is one of those that once you hear it, it's going to be one of your all-time favorites. Our second nominee for Song of the Year, Diamond Head, Am I Evil? Our second nominee for Album of the Year, listen, if it's good enough to be one of the greatest classic albums of all time, it's good enough to be a nominee for Album of the Year in 1980. British Steel by Judas Priest. One of their all-time best albums. It has many songs to choose from. It has the very heavy Rapid Fire. It has the very crunchy Grinder. But the song, it's even got some of the biggest hits in heavy metal history, with Living After Midnight and Breaking the Law. But you might have been able to guess, the song I'm nominating is the vocal tour de force of Rob Halford in The Rage. I love a song that builds. I love a song that has a crescendo. This song was not a big hit from Judas Priest. You may not have heard this song before. Once again, go out and listen to the song. Enjoy the intensity of the song. Enjoy the build of the song. And mostly just sit back and listen to a master at work. Rob Halford sings the hell out of this song. Our nominees, Judas Priest for Album of the Year, British Steel, and for Song of the Year, The Rage. Our third nominee for Album of the Year, these guys, Motorhead with Ace of Spades. Motorhead is about to put together two of the best albums in heavy metal history. Last year, Overkill. This year, Ace of Spades. The trio of Lemmy, Fast Eddie Clarke, and Filthy Phil Taylor are cooking. Some of my favorite tracks on this album are also some of the songs that I love, not just because they're heavy and fast and all that, but I love the lyrics. Lemmy has a way with words and catchphrases that are great. If you've never heard We Are the Road Crew or The Hammer, go listen to them, but in particularly pay attention to the lyrics. They are classically funny. Love both those songs a great deal. But obviously, nominated for Song of the Year has to be the title track. Ace of Spades, by far the best known Motorhead song and one of their best. Just the bass playing and Lemmy on this alone deserves a nomination. So, best album of the year, Ace of Spades. Best song of the year, Ace of Spades. Our fourth nominee for album of the year, the big comeback album from Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz. Not only is this Ozzy's big comeback, it's also the sensational debut of guitar whiz Randy Rhoads. And it also has some of the most memorable Ozzy Osbourne songs of all time. Everyone's heard Crazy Train. Who can forget the maniacal "all aboard" that starts that bad boy off? You have him talking about his personal struggles in Suicide Solution, his personal sorrow in Goodbye to Romance. He talks about precautionary tales of environmental destruction and Revelation Mother Earth. But by far the best song on the album, and being nominated for Song of the Year, is Mr. Crowley, who details the life of the infamous Aleister Crowley and has one of the best guitar solos in the Randy Rhoads collection. Album of the Year, Blizzard of Oz. Song of the Year, Mr. Crowley. Our fifth and final nominee for Album of the Year, Saxon, Strong Arm of the Law. So many good songs on this album. This is a very underrated album. Saxon actually puts out 2 albums this year. The first, Wheels of Steel, and then this bad boy. Can you imagine? Both of those albums were strong contenders to get a nomination. It's amazing to see these bands back in the day putting out not just 1, but 2 amazing albums in one calendar year. This one is got some of my favorite songs. The title track on this album, Strong Arm of the Law, fantastic. If you want to hear some really good guitar playing, Taking Your Chances, very underrated song, very under the radar song, but I love the kind of guitar duel that sends this bad boy home. One of the more interesting songs on this album also is Dallas 1 p.m. that talks about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Kind of interesting that a British band talking about the tragedies that are happening across the pond in America. Everybody would love, if you like a good banger, Heavy Metal Thunder, and another underrated one. I don't even know what it's really about. I'm guessing it's some sort of boarding school in England, but Sixth Form Girls, I've always liked that song. Really like the way Biff Byford sings it. Really great. Now, they are going to be nominated for Album of the Year, but it's a stacked year. So no songs off this album will get a nomination for Best Song. However, I do want to point out that because it came ever so close, the best song that Saxon puts out this year is actually back to that second album, Wheels of Steel. I love the song, 747, Strangers in the Night. Tells a harrowing tale. Think about this. You're in an airplane, you're trying to land, and all of a sudden, there's a blackout and there's no lights at the airport. And you're kind of hanging there trying to land the plane, and there's no way to land it because pilots can't see where they're supposed to land. Pretty cool song. Check it out. Saxon, 2 great albums, but the one who's getting nominated, Strong Arm of the Law. And the winner is tough choices. But for Song of the Year, I'm going with Motorhead, Ace of Spades. Like I said, Motorhead is on the run of a lifetime. 2 of the best heavy metal albums of all time, back to back, and some of the great songs. And Ace of Spades is that high note for Motorhead. This is their iconic song. Everyone's heard it. It single-handedly brought Motorhead into the spotlight, so it beats out some really tough competition. Album of the Year, Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath. On any given day, I might say that Heaven and Hell is my all-time favorite heavy metal album. At the very least, it's got to fall in the top 2 or 3. It is my absolute sweet spot when it comes to heavy metal. It's got the soaring vocals of Ryan James Dio. It's got the monster riffs of Tony Iommi. Don't sell short the tremendous bass playing of Geezer Butler and the drumming of Bill Ward. This is both instrumentally strong, vocally strong. It's got a wide variety of fast songs like Neon Nights, which is a great opener, Die Young, one of the more interesting riffs that Tony Iommi has ever come up with as far as his solo. And then they just kind of do kind of a pseudo-instrumental with Lonely as a Word, where Tony Iommi comes in with just a crunching riff and then plays it out to the finish. And of course, their signature song, Heaven and Hell. So that has to be Album of the Year, again, in a very strong field of nominees. Now, the Grammys that year did a clean sweep as well. They went for Christopher Cross for the album Sailing and the song Ride Like the Wind. Christopher Cross, one of the biggest artists in 1980. I was around back then. You could not escape Christopher Cross. He crossed over every genre of radio. He was on the rock stations. He was on the pop stations. I think he was probably even being played on the country stations. It was ridiculous, but as I've said many times, he was very much a one-hit wonder and kind of faded into obscurity just a few years later. So not only am I going to give Black Sabbath Album of the Year for heavy metal, I'm also going to give it Album of the Year across the board. And not only am I going to give Ace of Spades Song of the Year in heavy metal, I'm also going to give that award across the board. So congratulations to Motorhead and Black Sabbath, two of the stalwart bands of the early 80s. Now, this is the time of the episode where we talk about subscribing, giving me a thumbs up, liking this channel. We're putting out content every single week, and you don't want to miss a single episode. Next week, we're going to be breaking into 1981. And again, while 1980 may be the greatest year in hard rock and heavy metal history, 1981's right there. We have a lot of great episodes coming up detailing the great music of 1981. Also, we are rapidly doing another special for the band Ghost. We did an episode a few weeks back about their movie review. Got a lot of Ghost fans interested. I made them a promise that I was going to do another special on Ghost. So after we get through with 1981, boom, another episode on Ghost. So you don't want to miss any of this. The best way to do it is to subscribe, ring the bell, get alerts, and give me a like. It helps with the algorithm. It helps push the channel. Small, growing channel here. We really appreciate your support. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. As always, take care.